listen, welcome to our very brief, quick intro that we've tested out, and Amy is still with us. Hi, Amy.
Hello. I love your intro music. That is so cute.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna be in better behavior. Thank you, everybody. It's it's Tipsy Tuesday. There is actually no cocktails, but you're welcome to have some if you need some. I'm really honored to have you here, Amy, and I want to do a really good intro of you because you are one of those folks within the DEI space that I stalked for some time.
Thank you.
I did, y'all. So Amy is the CEO of Lead at Any Level. I think you've been around there for like more than 6 years, right? Do I have the dates right?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, about 5.5. Yeah.
Five and a half. Okay. So she is an inclusion catalyst, and we're going to dig into D&I. I want to talk about some of the trends. I want to talk about her company. I'm getting into her personal business. I want to get some help and support. A lot of folks have joined the DEI space as program managers. Some are leaders. Some have no business being in it. but we're going to dig into.
We're getting in all the trouble tonight.
We're getting in trouble. This is a trouble conversation. But I want you to know that, Amy, she's a top 50 HR influencer, which is, again, part of why I've been stalking her, because she does share some really, really good information. She helps companies that promote from within keep, which means retain their employees and keep them engaged. So we're talking retention and employee engagements. Fantastic keynote speaker, awesome trainer, great consultant, does assessments, all over media interviews. And if you go on her LinkedIn page, which we'll drop in the link later, you'll thank me for it. You'll thank me. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much. I feel like I don't need to say anything now because you made me look so good that if I even speak, it's going to be like, I'm gonna disappoint people here. But no, thank you for that. And it's interesting that you say you stalked me for a long time, because I know that there are people who do that. And I've been told several times that people watched me for 3 years before they reached out to contact me for work, or before they agreed to be on the podcast. Like, you were on my podcast recently, including you. And I know that people are watching, and it's not top of mind, but I'm glad that I've been able to be so consistent and in my messaging and so consistent in my presence, because it is important that we show up every day for this work.
I love that. I think so I'll just confess, as part of the reason why. And by the way, if you're watching this, whether you're watching live or the replay, hit the like button and share this out, y'all. I got to get the influencer stuff out. So the one thing that I really appreciate in Connect, first of all, she does accept connections, but please do not hassle this woman if you're trying to sell her something. Okay, let's keep the connections real. But one of the things I really appreciate is that you are responsive. The information that you're sharing is up-to-date material, because a lot of times what I see from some of the leaders in the DEI space is regurgitated articles. And I can Google stuff. I don't need that. I want your insight from a strategic perspective, which I think is part of why people are like stalking you, to figure out like, what does Amy think about this? And then to the other point about the podcast that you have, and we'll touch on this as well, is that you use your platform to give opportunities for other folks to come on and talk about these really sometimes sensitive or strategic areas. And so if you're a leader in any size organization, you really get a good insight and some free information about some of the best practices within this function. So I'm telling y'all all the reasons about, why I personally stalk Amy and why you should you should also hire her. So let's dig into Lead at Any Level. What is your organization and what do you do?
So Lead at Any Level is a boutique consultancy, and we offer assessments, advisory, and training services primarily to companies that promote from within.
Okay.
And all of our tools and all of our offerings center on this notion of inclusive leadership. How do you create leaders that proactively make the best decisions for the most people as much of the time as possible?
Wow.
Because leaders have to get out of their own perspective so they can make better decisions. And when we have inclusive leadership, we have better decision making. We have more engaged employees. We have longer employee retention, less turnover costs. And that's what we can help with. We offer, of course, keynotes and just all sort of thought leadership, right? But where I really want to help folks is in the training, assessment, and advisory space, because this really it requires a multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
Just like you can't learn piano lessons from watching somebody do a keynote on how to play piano.
Right.
You can't learn to be an inclusive leader by watching a keynote on inclusive leadership. You really have to, get into the guts of an organization, the policies, the culture, and the individual, frankly, to make all of those things work together.
I love that. I think one of the other things that I appreciate having you, and one of the benefits that I can see, so this is for all the other DEI leaders at organizations that I know also watch and stalk Amy, it's you're getting the insight from someone that's not a biased response. I think a lot of times when you're within the organization, after a while, the problems are the problems you created. And a lot of leaders don't want to, they don't want to fix certain things, or quite frankly, they don't have the tools or the information. So, this is kind of where you need to get someone who is doing this work and come in and help you. So, so how did you get to lead at any level? Like, how did you make this happen?
So, okay, there's a very long version of the story. I will try to make it very short. When I first went to college, I had no idea what people did who went to college. I'm from the middle of nowhere. The people who went to college never came back. We never saw them again. So I didn't know what people did if they went to college. If they went to college, they disappeared off the face of the earth. And my first degree, I just took classes that were interesting to me. And I ended up with majors in criminal justice and African American studies, and minors in sociology and Spanish. And my ambition was to be a civil rights attorney.
Oh, wow.
And my senior year of college, I learned how much law school was going to cost. And I learned the meaning of the phrase pro bono. And I decided I would not be going to law school after all. I went back, I got a second degree in computer science. I spent 20 years in IT, the last 12 of those in the insurance industry. And in 2012, maybe 2011, 2012, the company that I worked for hired a chief diversity officer. And I read the press release and I said, holy cow, there's a paycheck in that now. I want to go do that. And because, I'm not independently wealthy, but, if somebody's paying me to do the work, I want to do the work, right? And so then what I realized was, well, nobody was going to pay me to do that job, but they'd pay me to do my job. And I could carve out time through the week to go volunteer and help over here, right? Which is what a lot of people do that are passionate about D&I work. I realize now that when I showed up to help, it was a lot like when my kids show up to help in the kitchen. And I'm not proud of all of that, but I did learn a lot. But the question that I kept asking was, if I don't work in HR, which I didn't, I worked in IT, and I don't have policy control, and I don't set the direction for the company, and I don't have my own budget, what can I do to make a difference in this company? What can I do to make a difference in the industry? And I kept walking away with no notes, Shelley. Nobody told me what I could do. And I got frustrated. So what I did was I started doing my own research, which back then, doing your own research meant you actually went and did some research.
Right.
Not you checked out a Reddit channel. Right. And so I came up with this notion of, look, we all need a strong network if we want to have a rich and fulfilling career. Yeah. And I knew this because I had gotten laid off 1,000 times when I worked in IT, right? And so my network saved me. And I realized that so much opportunity flows through our networks, but so many of us, our networks look just like us.
That's right.
And if we want to change the flow of opportunity, we need to change the physical makeup of our networks. And so in 2018, I released a book called Network Beyond Bias.
Yes.
I don't always keep a copy of my desk. There happened to be one here today.
I have a copy, y'all. I was trying not to bring mine out.
But I wrote Network Beyond Bias, Making Diversity a Competitive Advantage for Your Career. And this was my roadmap to what can one person do to make a difference.
Wow.
I did this stuff in the book before I wrote the book, and my whole life changed. My career changed, everything changed. And I got excited about it, and I wanted to tell as many people as possible. And eventually I ran out of days off to go speak at conferences. So I finally said, you know what, I'm putting in my notice. I'm going to make a full-time thing of this. So that's what I did in 2019. And that was April 2nd, 2019. I left my job, my nice, cushy corporate job with a paycheck every 2 weeks. And started out on my own and Lead at A Level had been up and running for a while, but it became my full-time thing. And, we've expanded into consulting and assessments. We've expanded our training catalog. So we train on all sorts of inclusive leadership topics now. And, I've got people helping me now, which is great and necessary. So, because sometimes I need a nap, but I love this work. And my only ambition is to do more of the work. And that's what I want to do with my time. Every once in a while, entrepreneurship's hard.
Yes.
And every once in a while, I think, man, maybe I ought to give this up. And then I realize, even if I shut my company down tomorrow and we got a regular job, I would get in so much trouble.
Yes.
Because I couldn't not do this anymore. And if they hired me to manage a help desk somewhere, I'd spend all my time talking about the inequities of the pay structure and the hierarchy and the policies and the things, and wanting to train people on how they respond to change, and wanting to, strengths coach everybody, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't get my real job done because I'd be too busy doing all this. So the only way I can stay out of trouble is if I just do this for a living now.
Wow. This is what purpose looks like. And we're gonna dig into, some more D&I topics, but I just want to pause for a second because I get this question a lot from people who are trying to figure out what their purpose is and their value. This is what it looks like when it literally, you cannot give it up. It is just something. There's just something that you are absolutely meant, called, whatever the term is that you use, to do, and it's providing a value somehow, and you can't shut it off. I'm like you, Amy. If someone told me that I had to stop serving in the way that I do, I don't know. I don't know what else I would do. I'm just kind of operating in the purpose. And I think what people are picking up from you and why you're successful is because you're just easy to work with. It's just fun to talk to you. You're passionate about the subject. You're an expert in it. You know what I mean? You make it, you kind of have an environment where people want to work and want to learn from you. And it's all because you're working in that purpose space, and it just absolutely shows. So that is, again, that's what purpose looks like for those of y'all trying to figure out what it is. Okay.
I always ask people, the two questions, if you're having trouble finding out like who you're meant to be. Yes. What do you always get in trouble for consistently over time? And who can you not help but be? So if you've tried to fix whatever that thing is, right? Always talked in class, talks too much in class, go talk for a living. Yeah. Be a journalist, right? Be a speaker, right? Yeah. My problem was I was always buried in a book. I would get in trouble for reading in class.
Wow.
And now, I've made it my job, go read stuff, think about things, just sit and ponder. And you have to find the thing that you can't stop doing and then just make it work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to talk about, there was a McKinsey report that came out earlier this year, and it talked about DEI being at an inflection point. I'll drop the link to the article for those of y'all nerds like us who want to know more. Speaking of data, it talked about DEI being at an inflection point, and the fact that companies and institutions, they really demonstrated, is the best way I can put it, positive intent. Within the 2020 and 2020, we remember what was going on at that timeline. They were saying that they were estimated, as McKinsey was, that the global market for DEI, like the dollars spent by companies on DEI related efforts like ERGs, was around 7.5 billion, and it's projected to double to 15.4 billion by 2026. However, there's an example they share that, even at the current rate of DEI work, that it's going to take another 151 years to close the global economic gender gap at all levels. And yet we have organizations that are kind of drumming this down as, this is something we need to focus on. And so there's a long game when you think about DEI. I wanted to get your take. What do you think in terms of like where DEI is right now?
So I want to first, you said we could get in trouble here, right?
Oh yeah, we can get in trouble here.
Okay. So one of the things that I would like for people to understand is that these big companies that put these reports out, the reports are great.
Yeah.
A lot of these big companies that put reports out, I'm not going to name any names, don't take their own medicine.
Right.
So they're out there touting DEI. They are out there talking to companies about how to improve their DEI efforts. But if you look at those companies' org charts, the ones that are doing the consultative work,
yes,
they are very disproportionately in their senior leadership, very disproportionately white, very disproportionately male, very disproportionately cisgender, heterosexual. And so I want to make that very clear to people that there are people who are doing this for money.
Yes.
And the ones that are doing it for money get very, very good at doing it for money. Like that's a whole thing. So my guess is McKinsey's probably going to take 20% of that 15 billion.
Yes.
Right? Because they're out there with the slick reports and they're doing all the right stuff and they got all the buzzwords and they got the name recognition. Dig a little deeper before you hire a big firm to help you with your DEI stuff, because I think that there's some conflicting messages going on in some of those places. I want to start with that. I'm getting in all the trouble tonight. So that's one thing. So that aside, let's talk about what's happening in DEI. This work is not new. It's been going on for decades. It's new to a lot of people because it didn't affect them yet.
Yeah.
Some of my mentors have been working in this space for 30 plus years, 40 plus years. The work itself goes back to the Nixon era, right? When Nixon passed laws about, affirmative action and those sorts of things. I mean, started very compliance driven. So we're past the point where we have to be strictly compliance driven in most cases. Some companies are still struggling with that. Let's be honest. Very much struggling with that. The companies that are going to do well in this space are the ones who have tied the work to their mission, to their purpose, to their goals. For example, the companies that have said, you know what, we're looking at the talent horizon, and we are seeing a completely different set of demographics in the leaders that are going to lead our company in 2060 compared to the leaders that lead our company now. And if we want to attract the leaders of 2060 now, or in 2040, or even in 2030, we need to change how we're doing business. And not only are the leaders of 2060 or 2030 or whenever changing, so is our market. We're not selling to the same people we sold to 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And so when companies understand that not only does the sustainability of their talent depend on them getting this right, the sustainability of their market share depends on them getting this right. Now it's not about compliance anymore. Now we have to really understand what is going on out there, what's going on in here, and how do we bridge that gap so we stay relevant. Those are the companies that are going to win with DEI. And the reason they'll win is because when these laws get passed in different places where you can't talk about this thing, or you can't say this, or you can't have a hiring policy that requires you to interview, 4 minority candidates for every open position or whatever, right?
Yeah.
These companies are going to push back because they're going to, instead of just cowing to the edict, right? They're going to say, look, we will not be solvent in 10 years if we don't solve these problems. And that's more important. And that's where you have to have a bigger why than all the pushback you're going to get. And that, to me, the state of DEI is all over the place, right? Company by company, people have different commitments, but the companies that will still be here 10, 15, 20 years from now are the ones that get this right today.
Wow. Or the ones that have a diverse talent pool, because there's also the notion that, there's a lot of organizations that have fabulous programs, a lot of performative things, right? Lots and lots of ERGs and events and lots of performative things. But as you start to dig into the data tells the real story, that no, they're never going to promote people who look like me, because that's just that's the actual culture of the organization. So I love that point you make about following the money, and the fact that organizations like the one I mentioned, they're making a killing in this area as well, because because the money is out there, and they're companies that do want to do something for DEI. So another article I was looking at, Forbes published the five DEI trends to retire in 2023. So this is either going to make you laugh or throw a book at me. So the first one, the first DEI trend, according to this Forbes article, is that hosting mandatory, like one-off DEI trainings, like unconscious bias workshops. That it does serve the purpose of raising awareness about the fact that we have unconscious bias, as everyone does, but it's not offering any support in terms of the individual knowing what to do about their bias. What do you think about that? About one-off DEI training? Maybe it's not unconscious bias workshops, but what are you seeing in terms of some of the trends around DEI training, and what businesses should be looking at?
Yeah. So on the one hand, I love unconscious bias training because it's fascinating stuff, right? Yeah. It's super interesting to know how our brains work. It's also super interesting to know how like radios work, right? But what do I take away from that after an hour lunch and learn? Not a ton. When I do any kind of unconscious bias training, I give people a 3-step process for actually hijacking their bias.
Wow.
Hijacking their response. And it's really simple. It's just notice your response in a situation. Are you comfortable or uncomfortable or indifferent? Notice, and then kind of unpack where that comes from.
Yeah.
What are the values, judgments, identities at play in that response? Because we don't spend enough time just thinking about, well, how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
And why do I feel that way? And why did I jump to that conclusion? And then the second point, or the second step, is to observe how other people are responding, because the responses are going to be different.
Yeah.
And try to unpack why those responses are different. And then actually talk to people, gasp, who didn't respond the way you did, and ask
them. That's where it ends. They won't do that, because now you got to leave that protective bubble that you're in with the 3 or 4 peer groups that you follow. And again, this is not a like race issue. I'm just saying we're all doing it.
We all do it.
Okay. So it's getting people to leave that protective bubble to go and say, hey, perhaps I did have a bias, and maybe trying to learn a different perspective, and then, receive that and then do something with it.
Exactly. So, I could say, Shelley, in the budget meeting last week,
yeah,
when they changed everything we were going to do, I was so excited, and I could tell you were really upset. What did that bring up for you? What do you feel like you're going to lose with the different budget? Because there's something I'm missing, because I wasn't upset at all and I saw that you were, and I'd like to understand. Right? That's a whole different conversation than, well, Shelley's not on board with the new budget.
Right.
Which just putting that wall up.
That's right.
Third step is press your pause button. We know from unconscious bias training, we only think 40 bits of information a second, right?
Yeah.
We're getting 11 million in, 40 hit our brain. Put your finger right here under your nose on your philtrum or medial cleft. That's what it's called, that little divot. Put your finger there for a few seconds. Now instead of 40 bits of information, you get 80, 120, 160, 200. More information leads to better decisions.
Wow.
And so it's a simple 3-step process, but I don't think most unconscious bias training goes far enough to give people the what to do about it.
Yeah.
And so I've even had clients who have said, well, we want you to come in and do a half day of unconscious bias training. And I'll say, why? What is it that you want to get out of this? And a lot of times it's like morbid curiosity. And I'm like, well, if you're just interested, like go find Brain Games on Netflix and binge it. Like that's a whole different thing, right? Let's talk about what actually gets the work done. And I tell people frequently, I mean, in almost every presentation I give, we all wake up thinking our heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
But your heart can't be in the right place if you never move your feet.
Wow.
And very rarely do we ask people to actually move their feet.
Wow.
But that's what's required in this work.
That's powerful. I love that. That's a whole quote that's going to be in your next book. I don't want to steal it. I love that. So then the second DEI trend, according to Forbes, is the expectation that ERGs, so employee resource groups, are going to be tackling the issues, and that there's going to be a change in that. So as of now, that has been the expectation. They tackle recruiting or diverse recruiting. They are supposed to drive engagement with events. They are supposed to help with succession planning. They're doing just about everything but vacuuming the rug, right? And by the way, these are employees who are volunteering, so they have a day job, so they're volunteering. So what are your thoughts around maybe the shift that with ERGs?
Yeah, I think this whole thing is very interesting, and I've heard arguments on both sides. Do you pay your ERG leaders? Do you not pay your ERG leaders? How do you incentivize people to go above and beyond and do the right thing? And I absolutely think that there need to be incentives and rewards for people who are active in ERGs, because they are doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting in the organization, often not at the organization's expense, but at their own personal expense.
Yes.
It's their emotional labor. It's their free time. Right? It's, their job's not going to suffer. We know that. So
yes,
they're making it up somewhere. So I think that there needs to be something there for them. I think that this is one of those areas where companies expect magic to happen for free. They don't expect it anywhere else, but they expect it in this space. And I don't understand why, because every single thing else that companies want to accomplish, they put a budget behind.
That's right.
And if you look around, any major office building, whatever the initiative is that they have going on, they've got banners, they've got signage, they've got, wraps on the elevator doors, and the cafeteria is, they'll bring in, $40,000 worth of balloons for an event, whatever the thing is. But for some reason, when it comes to culture shift, when it comes to doing the right thing, when it comes to giving voice to people who maybe need safety in numbers to voice anything, all of a sudden that work is supposed to happen for free, and nothing happens for free.
That's right.
And we know that. So I agree that the expectation needs to change. I don't think ERGs need to go away, and I don't think that they should be entirely volunteer. I think there need to be paid positions around ERGs. I think there need to be incentives for ERG leaders, financial and non-financial. And I think companies need to do a better job of actually delivering on the promise of, this is where we're going to go for our leaders. This is where promotions are going to come from.
That's
this
right.
is how you get plum assignments in the company. This is where you go for mentorship. And we want to hear what you have to say en masse. Tell us good, bad, or ugly, and let us fix it.
I love that. So hopefully, all the ERG leaders who are going to be watching this later, that little spot was for you. Okay, this third one. I totally agree. This is crazy. But I guess the idea is insisting that only people of color should lead DEI efforts should end. And it should be all hands on deck. And this to me, I agree with. This is one of those situations where I'm always curious about the audience and the message, because that's also how my brain works. And if I want to talk to a group of men about how to support, I'm just making this up, y'all, so don't come at me, but support gender equity or pay equity for women. putting a woman in front of a group of men to have that conversation, it doesn't translate the same way, right? Regardless of whatever, we don't hear things the same way. And there are people who just kind of, we learn differently on all of those things. And I always thought that, the idea that someone who looks like me is going to show up in an office or a C-suite where no one looks like me and never will, okay? That all of a sudden they're going to, oh yeah, I'm glad Shelly's here. Now we can really make that shift without having, some of the, there are things in the behavior and the relationships, how people communicate that I don't have, but we've kind of stymied it. And I watched this, Amy, over 2020 and 2021 on LinkedIn. It felt like every week there was the company they had a new chief diversity officer or whatever the fancy titles were. And then like 6 months later to a year, they're gone, right? Because they couldn't make any impact. Well, because you're kind of going up against the grain. You're that one person trying to push something, and the community there didn't understand what you were even selling. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah. So I think the original question was about
so
only people of color leading DEI efforts, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
It should be all hands on. Should it be all hands on deck?
I agree. It should be all hands on deck, because here's the thing. If women could have solved gender inequity by ourselves, we would have done it already. If Black people could have solved racism by themselves, it would have happened already.
That's right.
Right? We need everybody rowing in the same direction on this. We need everybody working for it. And I hear quite frequently, this won't surprise you, that as a white woman, I shouldn't be doing DEI work. And, my thing is I'll try to stay in my lane, but I mean, let's all push this rock together, because gosh, we got a lot of work to do.
That's right. And you're getting indoors that, Black women can't get into. So why wouldn't you have some? I just can't.
So it's my job not to let the door close behind me. Right.
That's right.
And I think that's all of our job. Every single person in the world has privilege over someone else.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. I believe that every disease I don't know how to spell and pronounce is a privilege I don't even know I have.
That's right.
Right. And every identity I don't have that would otherwise, that would be marginalized, is a privilege that I probably don't know I have. And every new thing, right? So we're all a step ahead of somebody.
Yeah.
Let's just hold the door for the next person, whoever it is. And I really believe it sounds so kumbaya and simplistic, and I don't mean it that way. But I really believe that if we all just held hands and ran together, we'd all get where we want to go.
Wow.
But when we're so busy looking at the obstacles in front of us, and we never take time to look and see who's behind us, who hasn't caught up to where we are yet, because they're still, being bothered by obstacles we didn't see.
That's right.
Right? That's the problem. Instead of always looking forward at what's in front of me, let's look back and just get people, caught up, and then let's all move forward together instead of all trying to do it one at a time.
Wow. That's powerful. That's I feel like I'm cheating with the questions here, but I did not feed her any of this. That is powerful. The next, I think number 4 was talking about DEI leaders, and it was more about like the lackluster support that DEI leaders get. And I think, listen, it works both ways. It is true that there are a lot of leaders, and when I say lackluster support, I'm assuming now from the article that they're talking about maybe support from a leadership perspective and trying to make some moves and changes. But there's also, I think because the DEI market has now been oversaturated with a lot of folks who Google what to do versus have an actual strategy, right? So I think that has unfortunately adversely impacted the perception of what a DEI leader is. And so whenever I think about someone who talks about, first of all, whenever you talk about even the word leadership, I always remind people that's not a job title. Okay, that's not a job title. It's a skill. So I'd love to get your take on, the perception of a DEI leader today.
Yeah, give me 1 second because my headphones are about to die, and I want to switch over my audio real quick so I don't lose you completely.
No problem.
1 sec.
No problem. So while we're waiting for Amy, okay, go ahead.
Let's try that. Can you say something real quick?
Testing,
nope,
testing.
That ain't it. Let me try again.
testing.
Not working. Dag on it. Hold on 1 sec. I'm so sorry.
No problem. So while we're waiting for Amy, the number
all right, we're gonna go back to the headphones and just hope they hold out.
No problem. So number 5 is actually going to be about having
sorry, Shelly.
It's okay.
Okay, we're gonna 20% it says we're gonna.
Because I've got one more question, and then we're gonna close you out. All right.
Okay. So the question is about support. So here's the problem. Tell me if you've heard this one. So we've hired somebody to do DEI, and now it's their job.
Yes.
No. I'm sorry, no. We hire somebody to do finance too, but everybody's responsible for cost control. We hire somebody to do marketing, but everybody's supposed to talk about the company like we like working here, right? We hire somebody to do recruiting, but everybody's supposed to send referrals in. DEI is not somebody else's job. It's somebody else's function, but it's everybody's job.
Wow, I love that.
And I think that's the piece that a lot of managers are missing because they've not been told why it's important to the company, what's in it for them, and what specifically they need to do to push this forward. And I think once those 3 pieces are in place, managers will do what you tell them to do if you incentivize them to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that companies are missing. And this is not rocket science. Right? It's take all the principles that you use for every other initiative you do in your company and apply it to DEI.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. I love that. All right. So I'm gonna ask you one final question, and it's I'm nosy, y'all. What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh my gosh.
It's my own moment.
Woo. I tell my kids that my job with them is to get them to adulthood safely, and that when they get there, they're good, responsible people who take good care of other people. I think what I want to be remembered for is that I gave more than I took. I was a little more courageous than I felt. Right? I acted more boldly than I felt brave, maybe.
Wow.
And that I did something that was worthwhile and impactful to someone. And if I can leave the world that way, I think I've done my job.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm trying not to fog up my glasses, and I am going to be borrowing these for myself. But I love that. That is so amazing. So, Amy, I just want to thank you. We've come down to the close of our session. This has been so eye-opening. Thank you so much for giving me your time, and for all of you guys that are watching the live or the replay. I've dropped the link in the chat so that you can connect with her on LinkedIn. Please don't try to sell anything crazy. Just connect, follow Amy, watch her podcast. There's a lot of really good information that you can get for free. And then we'll hang out for just 1 second in the back room before we tell these folks to have a wonderful evening. But any last thing before we skedaddle on Tuesday?
Oh, no, I want to thank you, Shelly, first of all, for being on my show, and second, for inviting me to yours. This was a lot of fun. And I love these kinds of collaborations. This is a great time for me. But I do want to remind everybody that, your heart can't be in the right place if you don't move your feet. You've got to take action, because all of your good intentions, all of your beliefs, all of your heartfelt sentiment doesn't mean anything to people if they can't see, your faith in action. They can't see you moving the needle for someone else. And it matters. It matters where you put your feet. It matters where you go and what you do.
I love that. Faith without works is dead, for all of y'all who show up on Thursday. And I say it all the time. Faith without works is dead. Amy, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, y'all. We'll connect with you with next week. I'll see you next Tuesday. I'm going to say good night, and then Amy will hang out in the back room for a couple minutes. So bye, everybody, and thank you so much for watching.